on Thursday, the 17th of July, 2025. We'll move to apologies for absence first, please.
Yeah, from Councillors Robert Francis Davis and Hayley Gwynn.
Okay, thank you. Any other apologies this morning? I know Councillor Anthony, I think, is going to join us online shortly. If there aren't, then we'll move to disclosures of personal or prejudicial interest. Are there any for this morning? Councillor Gibbard?
Just a personal interest, just in case my daughter will be starting Gowerton Comprehensive, so I haven't got the agenda yet, the item on the capital.
Okay, yeah. Councillor Smith?
Item 7, member of the local authority governor appointment panel. I've got dispensation to remain but not vote.
Thank you very much. Any other declarations for today? No, we'll move then to the minutes of the previous meeting. They're on pages 1 to 4 of the agenda. I've not had any requests for any amendments, but happy to take any there may be this morning. If not, I'm happy to move them as a true record. Can I ask for a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor King. Thank you very much, Councillor Lewis. And all those in favour, please? Thank you very much. Those are agreed. Announcements of a leader of the council. Yes, I do have an announcement this morning, and it's a positive one. Very pleased to be able to announce that following a meeting with our colleagues in Mumbles Community Council, we have been able to agree a step-in arrangement to reopen the sports pitches and facilities at Underhill Park. Members will know that that facility went into voluntary liquidation recently. The council has taken very swift action to engage with the liquidators to agree a partnership with Mumbles Community Council to support the local community and to ensure that these fantastic facilities are brought back into use on a temporary basis while we look at a more permanent arrangement. I'm delighted that we've been able to step in the way and reopen the facilities. I know it's been a really worrying time for the community and for the clubs that use the facilities, but hopefully this will give much needed certainty as we move ahead. Our aim is to hope that we can conclude all of the necessary arrangements so that the pitches and facilities can open in early August, and this temporary arrangement will remain in place likely until the end of 2025. So again, very grateful for the cooperation with Mumbles Council. I also want to pay tribute to Lucy Moore, Chief Legal Officer, who's been working with liquidators to arrange this, and to all of the other officer colleagues who've been involved. I am very, very grateful for the work that has been done, and I'm sure Cabinet are as well. So I'm sure Cabinet will join me in thanking officers for the work that's been done on this and wish the community well in using the facilities in the coming months. So thank you for that. We'll move then to public question time. Are there any members of the public who would like to ask any questions? Have we had any? None? Okay, and therefore we'll move on to councillor question time. Are there any councillors present who would like to ask questions in either the open or closed part of the meeting? Open for now, but I'll take notification that you may want to open. Yep, apologies, Councillor Holly.
Thank you, Leader. Obviously, I got questions in the closed section, but also have to report back for pre-decision scrutiny. In the open part of the question, I would like to ask on the call recording policy, having read through it, can you assure us who will actually be able to allow to listen to the recordings? That's the first question. On the financing questions, I think there's far too many to ask at the moment, and I think I will actually write to the finance director to ask him questions on that. But if we could find out first of all on the call recording policy.
Yes, certainly. I'm calling Councillor Lewis.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Hawley, for the question. There will be a very select team that are able to look at the recordings. The recordings will only be held for 6 months, and the team will be looking to make sure in terms of customer service and improvement of customer service. That's why they're listening to the calls. I'm happy to get you a more detailed written response if you require that.
If you could, Councillor Lewis, because I think this is one of the areas that we need to have a robust policy, so that, you know, I know for a fact that in other organisations, anyone outside the organisation that needs to, like police or one of the authorities, need to have some form of warrant to look at it. And I think within the authority, we need to have named individuals who can listen to these recordings. So if you could, I'd be very grateful. Thank you.
Happy to give a written response.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Lewis. And just to add, Councillor Holly, just draw your attention to 4.3 of the report in terms of confidentiality. It does give an indication there that it's restricted to authorised people only on a need-to-know basis. But as Councillor Lewis has said, she will give you a further response on that.
Thank you, Leader. That's exactly what I did. Thank you.
Okay, if there aren't any more public questions then at this stage, and thank you. I know Mr. Smith will respond in terms of any financial questions that come in due course. We'll move on then to our first main item for today, which is the local authority governor appointments. I come to Councillor Smith.
Yes, thank you, Leader. It gives me great pleasure to move the report and thank the 3 individuals that are named in the report having come forward as local authority governors. So happy to move.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Very happy to second the report. Open it up for questions or comments, if there are any. If not, the report's been moved and seconded. Can I ask you to show if you're in agreement with the report, please? Thank you very much. That is unanimous. We'll move then to item 8, the revenue outturn report for the housing revenue account. I'll call Mr. Smith in first just to give some advice, and then Councillor Lewis if she wishes to add any further comments. Councillor Smith. Sorry, Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, relatively straightforward report for you on this first one in terms of officer advice. One recommendation in front of you, a slight add to the HRA reserves for the reasons set out in the report. This is against an original planned draw from reserves, which is part of a strategy of spending operating surpluses plus reserves on significant enhancement to the capital spend on the HRA, both stock and numbers of dwellings. But as I set out in the report, there is a remaining risk to all social landlords in Wales. I repeated this when Council took advice on setting the budget. It is, in my view, prudent to hold on to some of those reserves and just bolster them up. I hope that's a short-term position, and as those wider risks pan Wales are resolved one way or the other, normal service will resume, which will be that members will wish to maximise the amount that they are able to deploy on revenue surpluses to enhance the capital programme. But that's all I need to give in terms of officer advice on this one, and then can defer to Councillor Lewis, Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Councillor Lewis.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you to Mr. Smith for the update. Just to give a little bit of background in terms of the outturn for 24-25, we have seen a slight surplus compared to what we were anticipating of 0.335 million to add. So in total, there's a net surplus of 5,241,000, and there's a number of reasons for that. So we did see a significant increase in the repair costs. We dealt with a significant backlog in terms of maintenance repairs, but we've also carried out an enormous amount of gas and electric safety checks. That has resulted in an overspend of 7.4 million, and we continue to work with APSI to review that to get under the skin of why the repairs are going up so much, and that comprehensive review is on and underway. We also had some additional income in terms of the increase in our stock numbers, bringing more rent in, which is very positive, and some additional income from our furnished tenancy scheme. And there was also a reduction in the bad debt provision that we anticipated. So we did see an increase in rent arrears, but not as large an increase as we were expecting. And that's thanks to the work of the rent arrears team. So would like to pay tributes to them. So just to refer to page 14, where you'll see Appendix A with the total expenditure summarised, and Appendix B will show you the forecast balance for the reserves in 31st of March 2026 would be 21,985,000. So that's the largest reserves I think we've ever had, well, for quite some time, let's say that. So I'm very happy to move the recommendations on page 10, and it's recommended that the comments and variations in this report be noted, and that the proposed transfer of 0.335 million, as detailed in paragraph 13, are approved. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you for that, Councillor Lewis. And as you say, the large reserves are there for a specific reason, which we're aware of. And again, thank you for your comments on that, and fully agree and happy to formally second the report. Are there any questions or comments to Councillor Lewis on the report? If not, we've had the advice of Mr Smith, and Councillor Lewis has moved it. I've seconded it. So could I ask you to show if you're in favour of the report, please? Thank you very much. That is agreed. Move then to item 9, which is the capital outturn and financing for 24-25. Again, I'll come to Mr Smith for his technical advice.
Thank you, Leader. So again, I can be relatively brief on this one. Normal format for capital outturn. It'll come as no surprise. Not a whole of the capital programme was spent. So the recommendation in front of you is to seek that just under £26 million is rolled over into the current year. And if you do proceed on that basis, that will be added to the current year's capital programme. In terms of a bit more detailed advice, the outturn for 24-25, having taken into account sums brought forward from last year and the current year, we've achieved over 85% of the capital spend, which is very encouraging, a significant uplift. And you know, I always have mixed views. Members always aspire to 100% of capital spend. I'm always delighted if there's a bit left over, because the Treasurer can stick it in his dungeon with the gold coin and roll it over into the following year, which will flow into the revenue report in due course. For the scale of capital spend that the authority undertakes, and also the significant in-year decisions, it is actually a very simple report in terms of boiling it down to just a few pages. The whole totality of that thick end of £200 million is explained on a single page of appendices of big items and another 1 or 2 pages of slippage with the reason set out in front of you. But the scale of the spend should be noted. It's a very large programme, delivery percentage up, fully afforded, usual rollover tricks required by myself with permission, please, to roll it into the current year. It'll be rinse, repeat, recycle with a good allocation of the already pre-borrowed sums at 1% and 2% and some judicious use of the capital equalisation reserve to enable decisions and in-year decisions that no doubt Cabinet will take later today and in due course throughout the year. Thank you, Leader.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Smith. I'm happy to formally move the report. And again, you've covered many of the points I would want to make, but again, the key one being this is an exceptionally large capital programme. We remain one of the biggest in Wales, and certainly in terms of population, we are right up there. Again, there's been significant delivery across a number of major projects, some of which have opened this year, and many more which will open before the end of the year. So again, very, very pleased with the progress we continue to make in terms of investing in homes, in schools, in economic development, in regeneration. And again, very, very pleased with the work that's been done. And my thanks go to all of those who are working to deliver on our commitment to invest and build a better Swansea. So thank you for that. And I look to colleagues for a seconder, please. Thank you, Mr Anderson. Are there any comments or questions on the capital outturn and financing? If not, could I ask you to show if you're in agreement with the report, please? Thank you very much. That is agreed. Moving on to the revenue finance outturn report, and again, go back to Mr Smith for technical advice.
Thank you, Leader. So I'll spend a little bit longer on this one because there's a mixed number of issues and nuances that I wish to draw to attention. The recommendation looks relatively straightforward. You are being asked to recommend all of the proposed reserve transfers in paragraphs 74, 75 and 76, and I'll refer to those in a moment for the avoidance of doubt about what is being asked of you. In terms of the overall position, look, it is a treasurer's lot to always turn good news into but what about what could happen? There are many, many positives in this outturn report, and I'll draw attention to some of them in terms of technical advice, as well as highlight some of the things that cause me some concern, but I'll try and also contextualise it. Paragraph 8 makes quite clear the overall direct expenditure was nearly £17 million below revised estimate. You find a local authority that can rock up with £17 million below revised estimate. Yes, services have overspent, and I'll come back to that in a moment, but the underspend on core business, plus when it's factored in with the capital equalisation reserve, capital financing underspend, now it leaves you in a good position. You set a big budget with a plan to draw £29+ million from reserves, including drawing down from the final tranches of the Economic Recovery Fund. You outturned and needed to draw 2. So a negative treasurer would say, you've lived beyond your means. You've spent £2 million, but you've got £150 million plus in earmarked reserves. And on the basis you've drawn £2 million from earmarked reserves, a treasurer also quite likes to then top up general reserves. And you'll note in the report there's a suggestion that you add 2 million to general reserves because they're relatively low. And when one goes down on the seesaw, the other side goes up. So I think that's an important one to recognise in terms of the relative strength of the position. The table that follows emphasises the stuff before the capital financing, which is unique and meant to be one-off, but I always say it's temporal, and it's now about 4 years on the trot that I keep turning up and saying it's temporary. So we'll see how long the temporary lasts, as it were. And that is referenced in section 11. Look, most authorities our size, you will see their outcome reports, and they'll rock up with a £1 or £2 million underspend surplus on treasury management activities. We've rocked up with nearly 13 million quid on top of the 17 million pounds for the previous year. That is as a direct result of the dividend of borrowing 210 million pounds. And I remind you, I know I'm an old person and a boring record, 1% and 2%. Current borrowing rates are over 6%. That is what we're living off comfortably in terms of that treasury management return. It will go down because we're spending it on the capital programme. And it won't always be that level of money. If 17, then 13. I'm sure it will dip below 10 in the current year, but I'm also very confident there will be another add potentially available to you in the current year. So although there are lots of bolds and years and what falls, etc., in there, the important thing is those overall important big ticket items. I remind you in paragraph 44 that this is a repeat of last year's performance where at outturn there was a £12.4 million underspend which was carried forward into contingency, rinse, repeat, recycle. And we're in a position that at the end of this year, I'm able to advise that you can carry forward £18 million into contingency, which is a very substantial buffer against some of the uncertainties that we face. Those uncertainties include an unresolved National Local Government Pay Award, an unresolved Teacher Pay Award, and as yet unresolved any specifics on the national insurance compensation we were promised by UK government via Welsh government. You know, each of those individual items are £6-7 million a pop, so they are large uncertain items, which is why a treasurer will always go, yeah, it's good news, yeah, but. And you know, so there are things that are likely to be calls on contingency until things firm up. But hey, I'd rather have 18 million quid to play with than not, and I'm sure Cabinet would be in the same position. Similarly, in terms of section 48, we prudently set an inflation provision, which was enhanced, and we didn't need to use it all. So that was also available in the mix to carry forward. It shows the prudency throughout the budget setting. Section 49 onwards sets out the schools reserves position. This is a double-edged sword in some respects, but I'll start with my position, which is, you know, we are the richest schools in Wales. I am absolutely certain we will have had the largest add to reserves in Wales when it becomes official in October, and we will therefore, by definition, be most definitely the richest schools in Wales as a whole. But those reserves are not held equally, and there are some schools that are in real difficulty, and they cause me difficulty in terms of how to help and support them individually. This will need to be contrasted and compared against most other authorities in Wales that are now facing all schools in negative reserves. I lose, frankly, sleepless nights over helping 6 schools in deficit. How my colleagues cope with 100 plus schools in deficit is a real challenge. It's great for short-term support, but equally there is pressure often put on to why aren't you spending them, etc. Of course, it didn't happen by accident. When the budget was set for 24-25, the leader, in discussion with myself and took it to head teachers forum, decided to release £7 million from the ICT reserve as a one-off boost, because we could see what was happening in Pound Wales and would have happened to us without that emergency intervention. It's been bolstered by being put into base in the current year. So I'm pleased that it's a strong position, but I do recognise there will be potentially difficulties given that it may look out of kilter with everyone else or most others. But I'd still rather be in a position where I've got money to play with on your behalf, and I'm sure you'd be in the same position. But you would also want to continue the messages. It's much easier to be talking about having money to in reserves than to be in a position where there's none and a recovery plan needed for the whole authority. My other negative, because as I say, I haven't had a positive, section 61 sets out the risks. The risks are still there in terms of most authorities will have some pressures in spending in social care, homeschool transport, homelessness and waste management. I do not expect a repeat of last year's very large overspends in homelessness and social services to the same degree. And I'm going to come back to that in a moment when I come to the summary table just to pull it all together for you. But in terms of lots of positivities in terms of the position for the year, but nervousness about the uncertainties in the current year and what's coming in terms of future settlements. But, you know, hey, how many years forward do you go? And on balance, I think this is a very positive position to be in compared to many other local authorities in England and Wales. Section 76 sets out a whole raft of proposals in terms of the specific asks upon you of what's to be added to and from reserves. And because it's a long report, I will just draw your attention to Appendix A, because this really does pull it to a conclusion on a single page, the whole activity for a year for a £600-700 million net authority, close to £1 billion gross. And I'd also like to recognise some of the other things that were done in year. If you want any evidence of strong control, guidance, leadership, at risk of sounding smug, I don't mean myself, I mean my directorate colleagues, I mean CMT collectively, I mean individual cabinet members, and I mean cabinet. You will recall, first quarter, we said that we would be many tens of millions of pounds overspent in social services and place, and unusually you decided to tolerate 8 million on those two, and there were active management decisions taken by cabinet members and officers to manage to that 8 million pounds. That place and social services outturn is nigh on 8 million pound tolerated overspend. Perfect control delivered by all working in conjunction. And the other three directorates all year said they would underspend and did underspend. So the position couldn't be better in terms of grip. You know, you knew at first quarter what was coming in this report effectively on the spending position. Yes, I've drawn then attention to still overall it's a £3 million service overspend, which I have to be disappointed about because it's the first time in living memory we've got a service overspend. But set that against the central inflation not used and the big corporate items. Welsh Government recognised authorities would be under duress and chucked out about 7 million quid's worth of one-off money to help with all the overspends that they expected every authority to have above the line. And that's what helps drive the overall net operating spend to a £13 million underspend. As I've already referenced, you've got a combined near £13 million exceptional Treasury management gain again, which takes it to the 26 million. And there was a £2 million surplus on council tax collection. Again, it's always a double-edged sword, isn't it? You know, we're criticised for having, in one sense, relatively high levels of arrears. We're potentially criticised if we're too harsh on collection. We want to get collection right so that people don't have the bills passed on to others. We try to be as compassionate as possible. We try to be sensible and set a budget that still results in a £2 million surplus on council tax, which seems to me reasonable to add back to general reserves at year end. And you've got an overall position which is effectively two lots of swings of £13 million, which is the 26 odd million quid, plus the £2 million surplus on council tax, which entirely explains why you've got all those swings as a whole. And compared to anyone else, I think that's a commendable result for the year, notwithstanding my usual dire warnings throughout in terms of all the bold of. There's a whole raft of things I don't know. We might be short on a whole raft of things, and who knows what will happen next year or the year after and several years forward. But in terms of stability, predictability, I don't think it could have gone better in terms of what the first quarter said all the way through consistently to outturn. None of you should be surprised by anything that is set out in this report in terms of my officer advice. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. And yeah, I thought you were quite positive today, so absolutely welcome that. No, but it's hard not to be positive when we are, as you say, more than 30 million to the good in terms of where we could have been, and certainly looking across Wales and the financial position that other councils face, we are in an exceptionally strong position. And I know that has been recognised by our auditors previously as well. Look, just also, I know it's not in terms of this year, but I think the context of what we did not only in year but since then as part of setting the budget going into this year, we not only rebaselined in year to provide extra money immediately to social services and others, but we made decisions come budget to invest significant additional sums this year to rebaseline those services. So again, I think we can go confidently into this year with an expectation that we won't see the sorts of big swings and overspends that we were having to deal with last year. Really, really useful to come out with a surplus that can then be reinvested in services and in our communities. And I think that's the key point here. It's not a surplus for surplus's sake. It is money that will be reused to improve services and to invest in communities. And really pleased again for the setting up for the agreement to set up the Economic Growth Fund to be set at an initial £10 million. We'll work through the detail of how that fund can be deployed, but it's there to benefit businesses, to benefit local communities, local residents and local businesses as we try and ensure that we take actions to help grow our communities and our economy in Swansea. I don't believe there is any other council in Wales that is setting up a local growth fund. It is consistent with the aims and objectives of both the Welsh Government and the UK Government. Growth is the #1 aim of those governments, and it's also a key aim of this authority. I also want to reflect what Mr. Smith said in terms of school reserves. Absolutely. Again, we put record sums of investment into schools last year this year at budget, but we also came into the year having been extremely generous in the previous year with the school settlement, acknowledging the energy pressures that they were facing, acknowledging other pay pressures, and doing everything we could, including providing the entire reserve to schools, a central reserve to schools, to help with their funding situation. They are in a position now, as you said, Mr. Smith, where they have exceptionally high reserves, and they are going to get higher, we think, by the time that the formal figures are announced. But it is right to acknowledge, and it is something that we constantly talk with head teachers about, those reserves are not held equally across the estate. So it's not a position for every school. Some schools will be in a much more difficult position than others. But again, it is important that schools' reserves are only held at an appropriate level, and that where possible that money is released so it reaches the pupils and they feel the benefit of the investment. So again, more work to do with our school colleagues, but it is accepted that that position, whilst on the surface will look very high, there are schools within that who are struggling and who will be facing difficulties. But we will continue to do what we can through transformation and support, which we've discussed with head teachers, to help them overcome those pressures. Again, in terms of outturn, can I thank you and your team for the work that you have done again this year to get us to this absolutely, I would say, astounding position. Really, really pleased in terms of where we are. Can I also thank my cabinet colleagues and directors for the work that they've done, because this has been a really difficult year in terms of managing budgets, managing pressures, and again, to come to this final position for last year, it is really, really positive. So thanks to everybody who's contributed to that. It's now for us to make sure that we design the priorities for the local growth fund and for the other reserves that we hold, because Mr. Smith referenced the contingency fund there. I know there are conversations already with cabinet colleagues. I know Councillor Anthony is keen to ensure she gives certainty for the winter help scheme and that we have enough funding for that. I know other cabinet members have made similar requests in terms of where we know pressures will exist this year that we will need to deal with. And again, I'll be having conversations with Mr. Smith very shortly in terms of how we best meet those pressures in the coming months. So again, colleagues, thank you very much, and I'm more than happy to move the report. Welcome somebody to second, please, and comments from colleagues. Councillor Smith.
Yes, thank you, Leader. I'm happy to second and would echo what's been said, especially in terms of school reserves, but the education budget in general. There are underspends in certain areas there, but there are reasons driving those factors driving those underspends, and I think it's important that we recognise that that's not a sustainable position. That money will need to be refocused to meet priorities, and there are actions around that. In terms of the school reserves, as Mr. Smith and yourself have said, these are not held equally across the whole of the school estate. And again, there are actions that need to be taken to examine that problem and ensure that we are supporting each school in Swansea, that that they are able to meet the demands on them. So I'm happy to second the report, Leader.
Thank you very much, Councillor Smith. Councillor Lewis.
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, just to comment very briefly on the pressures that continue in terms of homelessness. I'm really pleased that as a council we're still maintaining our Always a Bed pledge, and looking forward to seeing Llys Glas coming online towards the end, around the autumn time, where we'll see 68 rooms released, and we'll be able to get some people out of bed and breakfast, because we realise that that's not ideal, and we'll continue to work to find some better alternative accommodation as we move forward.
Thank you, Councillor Lewis. And yes, those homelessness pressures remain acute, and that is the position not just in Swansea, but of course across Wales and the UK. Very grateful to hear the announcements by UK government and Welsh government to help us deal with those problems, but they are long-term solutions that will need to be deployed if we're to increase the amount of housing that's required to reduce the amount of homelessness that the UK has experienced because of the deficit that has built up over 14 years of Tory government. So thank you for that, Councillor Lewis. Are there any other comments or questions from members? If not, could I ask you all to show if you're in favour of the report, please? Thank you very much. That is agreed. Move on then to the capital programme authorisation for the commitment of capital grant funding awarded to supporting learners with additional learning needs. Councillor Smith.
Yes, thank you, Leader. It gives me great pleasure to move this report. It commits 1.4 million, 1.46 million, is almost 1.5 million, to meeting the capital needs of learners with additional learning needs. Delivery has to be undertaken by the end of this financial year, so by the 31st of March 2026. Some of the funding, as will be clear from the report, will be on equipment, but the bulk of it will be on capital. And I think what we've got to remember is that this will improve provision for learners with additional learning needs. Some of the learners with some of the most vulnerable learners we have in the city and county of Swansea, and I'm proud that we are able to make this investment. Or happy to move the report, Leader.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Smith. And as I said, it comes on top again of announcements we've made of record funding for education. But it's really pleasing to see that additional money again, providing money to, as you said, to some of the most vulnerable learners that we have in Swansea. So very happy to second the report. I'll open it up for comments and questions from colleagues. If there aren't any, then could I ask you all to show if you're in favour of the recommendation on page 41, please? Thank you very much. That is agreed. Moving on then to item 12, which is another one, which is commitment of capital funding for the contractor appointment and design and development of Gowerton School. Councillor Smith.
Yes, again, thank you, Leader. And again, it's great pleasure in moving this report. This is the latest stage of the investment in Gowerton School, and of course, it's the latest stage of this council's investment programme in the school estate. I know that some members have visited the schools and visited the school and seen for themselves the existing buildings, and also looked at the potential for investment, and this will provide enhanced learning facilities. It will help to meet carbon reduction aims, and it will also bring community benefits. But what I would say in this report, if you look and read the integrated impact assessment within this documentation, I think that outlines all the different benefits that this scheme will bring. And I think that is again something that we can be proud of as a local authorities. We're very happy to move this report, Leader.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Smith. And again, very, very happy to second. As you've alluded to, the annex does highlight all of those significant benefits that the learners will receive as a result of the investment. But of course, it's just part of that ongoing record-breaking capital programme for schools, over £180 million being invested in new facilities across Swansea, on top, therefore, of the investment that we have for universal free school meals, which is also being rolled out. And it goes a long way to our commitment in terms of £1 billion being invested in education and learning over the period of our administration. So again, very pleasing, around £7 million being invested with this report, including the £384 million previously announced. So very, very happy to second. Could I ask if there are any comments and questions for the report? Councillor Hopkin.
Yeah, rather remiss of me, sorry, Leader. I should have declared a personal interest in this. My granddaughter is a pupil at Gowerton School.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Hopkin. We'll note that and get the form over to you. If there aren't any further comments or questions, then the recommendations there on page 50. So could I ask you all to show if you're in agreement, please? Thank you very much. That is approved. We'll move then to item 13, which is the call recording policy. Councillor Lewis.
Thank you, Leader. And I'd like to place on record my thanks to Sarah Lackenby and the Digital Services team for all the ongoing work that they're doing with digital transformation across the council. The call recording is planned to be part of our unified comms strategy, and I'm pleased to say that our new telephony system went live this month, and to report that the feedback from the public in terms of the queuing system where you can request a call back has been really positive. So we are starting to move with the times finally in terms of our customer service. And like many major organisations, call recording is no different. So we would plan to use this to improve our customer service and examine any calls to see where we can improve as we go along for the benefit of the public when they call us. So callers will be informed that the call will be recorded. That has to be part of this process. And we've done some major stakeholder consultation in terms of this. So we've consulted with the trade unions, service managers, the data protection officer has also reviewed the policy regards to data protection regulations and that customer data is handled appropriately. And IT and security staff have also been heavily involved in terms of the technical aspects of call recording, including the implementation, the maintenance and the security of the recording systems, and also ensuring that the data is stored securely and that access is carefully controlled. In terms of risks and issues, we would only anticipate that we would keep the calls for 6 months. That's a practical element because obviously, there's a large storage requirement for recording all these calls and holding that data. So we'd only keep it for up to 6 months. And as I say, data security is an extremely important aspect, as Councillor Hawley referenced. All the recordings will only be accessed by authorised personnel, and I will make sure that that list is given in writing to Councillor Hawley in answer to his question. So there are no financial implications, I'm pleased to say, with this report. So I'm very happy to move the recommendation that Cabinet approve the call recording policy attached to Appendix A. Happy to take questions.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lewis. Very happy to formally second. And again, many thanks to you and to Sarah and the team for bringing this report. I know the call recording policy will be welcomed in terms of the reasons you've laid out. So thank you very much for that. Open it up for questions or comments. If there aren't any, Councillor Lewis has moved the recommendation on page 86. Could I ask you all to show if you're in agreement, please? Thank you very much. That is agreed. Move then on to item 14, which is the new build of Bishop Vaughan Catholic School. Councillor Smith.
Yes, another pleasure this morning to move this report, Leader. I think it provides an outline of progress to date with the redevelopment of the Daniel James site and including a new build for Bishop Vaughan Catholic School. What this report does, in addition to providing that update, is outline the land swap that will be required to facilitate this project to move forward. And can I thank both representatives of the Archdiocese and in particular our officers across council who have been involved in this work. It's been a very meticulous project to undertake to come to this point, and I'm happy to move the report and thank the officers responsible, Leader.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Smith, and thank you for bringing the report and agree absolutely with your comments. Just from me, I think it's important to reflect that clearly at the time we weren't the administration, we did disagree with the decision to close Daniel James School. That is something the community had been really concerned that we worked with them to bring a brand new school to that site, and that is something we committed to do. This report, as you say, takes a step forward in doing that. Potentially gives a new build to Bishop Vaughan Comprehensive School, but importantly also allows us to deliver vocational education into that location. We know that community is keen to see an expansion of vocational education close to where they live, and that is something I know you and I have discussed with officers, and officers are working to achieve. So again, really grateful for the engagement of the diocese and the way that they've agreed to work on this project. I think it's one of those ones that's a win-win-win. So, it helps us to reactivate an old school site and bring a new build to that site. It helps reduce the significant backlog of repairs that Bishop Vaughan currently has and provide them with the state-of-the-art facilities, but also then meets our commitment in terms of improving vocational opportunities in the area. So thank you very much for that. I'll open it out to colleagues for comments and questions. Councillor Lewis.
Thank you, Leader, and real thanks to Councillor Smith for bringing this report here today. Really warmly welcome it. It'll be really beneficial to the children in those communities. It's over 10 years ago now since my children attended Bishop Vaughan School, and I can tell you it wasn't in the best condition then. So it's much worse now than it was then. But what I really wanted to do is welcome the vocational facilities that are planned on the Daniel James site. We have huge skills shortages in terms of construction, and we know that there's a major pipeline in terms of new council house building and the city centre regeneration developments. So to see vocational studies put forward like this and prioritised is really important in terms of ensuring that our ageing workforce are replaced by younger people, giving them job opportunities in Swansea in terms of construction. So I really welcome it. And again, my thanks to Councillor Smith for bringing it here today for us.
Thank you, Councillor Lewis. Absolutely agree. And I know that there is a great will in the community to see this delivered. It is something I'm sure they will be really positive about, and very grateful, as you say, for Councillor Smith and the work that he and officers have done to get this report to us today. I don't know whether you want to pick up on any of those points before we go to the vote.
No, I feel the halo on above my head with the comments this morning, but no, really appreciate Cabinet colleagues' comments. And this, as has been said, is an opportunity to improve the facilities in a key part of Swansea where there was a secondary school and that school was closed. And it's not just about moving one school and replacing it with another. It's about how we formulate the curriculum for the 21st century moving forward, and I think that's going to be one of the exciting elements of this project. So again, happy to move the report, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. If there are no further comments or questions, then the recommendations are there on page 96. They've been moved and seconded. Could I ask you all to show if you're in favour, please? Thank you very much. That is again agreed. We move then to item 15. You have the rationale there for exclusion of the public from the Chief Legal Officer. Could I ask you to show if you're all in agreement? Thank you very much. Then we will then proceed into private session and we'll just pause for a second whilst the recording is ended.